I don't want to speak too much. I will give you a brief background on who I am specifically, but I really might rather get into how the reason why we're all here. The only way we're going to stop this plan, and there is a plan in effect, and in a little while I'll pass you out. I mean, they love to, and I'm going to use a general term several times in my conversation here. There is what I call, and I'll keep the specific names out to save the incriminating, however they say that. There is a profiteers PR team working actively to keep the citizens of Gloucester uninformed, and they're doing an excellent job. It's more than one people. It's organized. It's a whole combination of. There's a plan, and the plan is not about a hotel. Part of the profiteers PR team is to keep you misinformed, is so that you just think it's about a hotel being stopped again by the people down the floor. That ugly eyesore. They don't want change. This is if you guys, anybody's reading the paper? Has anybody read that in the paper? A handful of people down the floor keeping an old building. Maybe they'd rather have the junkies hang out down there. Why are they stopping progress? They're obstructionists. This is a reoccurring theme from this profiteers PR team, and they've done a tremendous job. And part of why they're doing a tremendous job is because the citizens of Gloucester, like myself, I am not an activist. I'm a Fort kid that likes to row boats and goof around and draw attention to myself. That's why I'm up here. But that's just a joke. The reality is, no, the reality of this situation is, the reality of this situation, why I got drawn in, I watched it twice. I watched the Marriott come in and heard those lies. It was going to boost the city. We're going to reopen schools and fire stations, jobs. It's the same lies that I heard for the Marriott. The city said no. The people rose up and said no. The abutters said no. This isn't what's good for Gloucester. So they said, all right, they went back to the drawing board. Mayor Kirk didn't like that answer, no. So she went back to the drawing board. They brought in Mac Bell, a pretty good-sized developer for the city. And I watched and listened to Mac Bell's lies. So I sat in the audience right next to Bob Ryan while Mac eloquently defined his mixed use was going to include the International Dory Race Committee, which I was president of at the time, lying bold-facedly to my face, and bring Ryan and Wood distilleries in. Bob Ryan leans over to me and says, I can't produce liquor in the same place with residences. Mac was just throwing fluff. So that got shot down. Now they're getting better at it. They've been at it for a couple of years now. They're determined to change Gloucester. And you can read all the smoke and fluff you want about how many hotels, how many rooms. They've changed it already in the couple of months that they've designed it. But there's a bigger plan. And I brought a couple of maps. I'll pass out around, and I want you to pass these around.
Here, Jimmy.
That's an extra one? Oh, she's got all kinds of them. I wrote an article, letter to the editor in November, saying, wake up Gloucester, it's not about the Ford anymore. Jim Davis is in town, and he's actively pursuing property all over Gloucester. And he is. The LLCs, combined with Mac Bell, by the way, totally denied he ever knew Jim Davis, even though he was an innovator selling New Balance sneakers when he had the glass sailboat. He was also seen with Jim Davis the day that Nathaniel Mulcahy and Kukru, the owner of North Atlantic, were asked to leave the building because they were going and walking the streets. Every day down the fort, you watch Lexuses and Mercedes driving around the fort now. We used to see wharf trucks, but now it's Jaguars, Mercedes, and Lexuses. And rather than look out at the beautiful view we have down there, they're pointing in and they're stopping and they're looking at what's going to be their new condominiums. Now, that is purely speculation on my part. But if you take a look at the map and you see the land grabbing that's going on by Beauport LLC, Cruiseport LLC, 1907 LLC, Pavilion Mercado LLC, Waterfront, there are actually, I think, I wrote down the number, I think it's 7 LLCs have purchased 8 properties, and have actively pursued these other properties you see. Coincidentally, at the same time, the city is saying, we can't do anything with I-4C2. Let's pull it out of the DPA.
So explain the map before they all look at it, though, so what
I
they're seeing.
don't think that map needs explaining. The red is there and the blue is there.
They're not all properties that have been bought. They've been either bought or
it says that clearly on the map. Some have been purchased.
Yeah.
All of the red.
Realizes that.
Right.
$1 million each, is that what it is?
No, I wish some of them many more millions.
So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, you're a waterfront property owner. Are you going to support the rezoning so that you can get a piece of this pie? Jim Davis is going around paying triple the value.
Now, I'm glad Jimmy brought up the I-4C2, and I'll touch briefly on that, and then in the red shirt, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, so I don't want to just say, hey,
Ray Carrington.
Hey, Ray? Okay, I'm the...
Rick. Richard.
Rick, nice to meet you. So, for the I-4C2, and Rick mentioned very wisely New Bedford. New Bedford is a great example of what you can do with a marine industry city. Their former mayor, Scott Lang, because they have city-owned marine industry space, was able to get $280 million of federal and state funding funneled straight into the city. He was able to get $80 million just to restore historic buildings on the historic waterfront. He was able to get hundreds of millions of dollars for green energy systems. He was able to get hundreds of millions, millions of dollars for the 200 remaining fishing boats in the New Bedford Harbor, and to help them upgrade their systems, help upgrade their docks. So the possibilities that are there are there. One of the key things in being able to access much of those funds is that the city has to own the land. As I mentioned earlier, there are 116 lots on the marine industry and DPA area in Gloucester. Of those 116, there are 2 lots available to the city.
Let me interrupt because that came up on Monday. Technically, the story is actually worse.
Yeah.
Like Maritime Gloucester is able to access Seaport bond money and other public funds. They've worked out the details. The city is capable of funneling similar millions into this working waterfront in spite of it being owned by private property. But what I have seen over the years is that they have not committed themselves to this waterfront. They've worked on industrial parks and Gloucester Crossing and whatever, but it's the absence of an aggressive solid plan that New Bedford has had that has meant that we have not asked for nor received these millions of dollars that are available from the federal and state government. So that's a compounding element. I think the picture that's emerging is that, unfortunately, everyone has your question, Cynthia. Where's the marine industry? And if it isn't there, then there can't be any. And so then as each year goes by, it looks more dire. And it's 2 things. It's that in this, and Suzanne Altsberger has been fabulous at articulating this, is if you want to cause problems for a working waterfront, you add this instability in the zoning. Yeah. You get the owners holding off the property, speculative real estate development, and you stall work coming into the working waterfront. And the second thing I would say is that any community worth their salt makes public investments and partnerships in these kinds of research. We've let universities go to other ports, New Bedford, South Dartmouth. While they've set up programs, we've done nothing to really bring a solid academic idea business generator.
Our stories of success interrupt their stories of marine industrial's dead. Look, nobody's coming, we have to sell out,
Right. Instead of having a proactive investment strategy. The other thing is that we have not gone after infrastructure investments on the waterfront. So when the Dehive closed, there's been a need, if you're going to bring processing back, to have pre-treatment in wastewater. And we haven't articulated that need and gone to the state and federal governments for that kind of support. So, in many ways, I think what we learned at the Maritime Summit last fall is that the state and federal governments are kind of waiting for us to get our act together to figure out where we want to go in the marine industrial area and get their participation with the monies that they have in the millions or tens of millions, or in the case of New Bedford,
Yeah,
hundreds of
marine
millions
industry
of dollars.
doesn't come dropping in your lap like Jim Davis's bags of money. It has
Well,
to be gone
sometimes
to
it is in your lap too, and you still don't.
Just walking, if I may, talking about the Maritime Summit, I don't know the specific numbers. I know we got a grant to invite all these experts from around the country to come and tell us what's Gloucester's maritime future. And I'd just like to share some points with you on this. By the way, the Maritime Summit, I remember one number from the draft of their summary. There's 481 marine science, marine-related businesses in New England that, given the right stimulation, they will come. I walked down the fort. Now, this is what the city should be doing. Keep in mind, the city is not going after. How much money did New Bedford get in funding in the last several years under Scott Lang?
280 million.
$280 million available to boost your maritime economy and the infrastructure work and the cleanup that's necessary to draw these kind of people. That doesn't just drop in your lap. You gotta go write the grant. Somebody has to go after that money, and the city hasn't been getting that done because they have another plan.
That's not entirely true, Jimmy. The city, from those same funds, did get $1.2 million to build a harbor walk.
I'm sorry.
Very pretty.
1.2
The
million.
it's falling in.
Well, and I think that actually, the last point I want to make, and because I was actually very much involved in the Maritime Summit, and by the way, there's a presentation, I gave the keynote address.
Yeah.
And there is a presentation on